Hey everybody, this is D Hunter, bringing another action figure diorama review. Today, we're going to look at the Extreme Sets Asylum pop-up diorama. This is the re-release version. This version came out with the Multiverse Series 10 Extreme Sets. Very curious to see if it has any differences from the original release. Extreme Sets dioramas are 1/12 scale cardboard pop-up dioramas, and they're very sharp. This is going to be a great substitute for Arkham Asylum and my Batman action figure collection. Shout out to my boy RB. He runs an eBay store called RebTech. He sent me this item to review. He sells a lot of extreme sets, so you may want to check out his eBay store and see if it's a good hookup for you. I'll put a link to his store in the description below. So let's take a look at the packaging here. As you can see on the front, kind of an example of what you're going to get inside. You got a doorway, a little ventilation, Asylum pop-up. Here's an example of what it's going to look like on the inside. My package is a little bit beat up at the top. That shouldn't affect the contents. It's completely blank at the top. One side it says Asylum pop-up diorama 1/12 scale, and there is a barcode in case that helps anybody. On the back you can see it says Extreme Sets pop-up diorama, and there is that barcode again. So with no further ado, let's open it up. Funny thing is, I have the original release as well as this re-release. The packaging seems to be quite a bit thicker and taller in the re-release. I assumed it was identical contents inside, but now I'm really questioning that. We will check that out in this video. In this video, we're going to take a look at the assembly, the measurements, the different action features, and then we'll check out a bunch of different action figures from different various companies to see what fits in both scale and style wise, in case you want to know which lines you can use with this thing. And I also want to see if these two dioramas are going to connect together to make a giant Arkham Asylum. Fingers crossed that works. So let's check out the contents on this re-release. Alright, now that we got these pieces out of the package, here they are laid out on the table. We have 7 different wall pieces, we've got 3 different floor pieces, and then 2 pillars. And don't forget, it also comes with an instruction manual. This here is going to have all the contents and then step-by-step instructions of how to build this thing. So, let's get started. So looking at the instructions, it looks like you're going to end up building an enclosed cell here. It's going to have 4 walls on the side, and then 1, 2, 3, totaling 7. The previous Asylum was done in a completely different way. We'll definitely check out if this thing can be done in many different options, or if it has to be done this way. We'll start off by building it the way the instructions show us. Let's start off by assembling these 2 pillars or columns. Take this thing, it's laying completely flat, sort of pop it open, fold it completely the opposite direction, and crease it very hard. The better you do that, the better it's going to make your life. Then take these tabs, crease them inside. These tabs here, crease every single fold as hard as you possibly can. Do the same on the bottom. Now that I've got them creased and prepped for the build, they're going to look about like this. Now, take this pillar, fold the tabs in, fold this tab in, connect it in like so. Do that on all 4 sides. And now I have these 2 pillars fully assembled. They're going to look like this. Now to take some of these wall pieces and put them together. Like I said before, I'm going to be building this like the instructions show, but after that's done, I'm going to see how else you can assemble this thing. So on the instructions, it showed us to take the wall piece with the bars with one of the other wall pieces. They do attach on the side here. You see this area, it's creased. Fold it down pretty firmly, fold it all the way across. Then you've got these sort of tabs here. These tabs will insert into these slots. So here are the first 2 wall pieces put together. This diorama comes with 5 different one-sided wall pieces and then 2 two-sided wall pieces. Obviously, these different pieces can be interchangeable, can be seen on both sides here. This seems to be how the instructions are showing you to build this thing. Not my ideal way to do this, but could make for some cool action figure photography. Add in that second double-sided door piece, and you've got a little break in the center. And add this last wall panel to fill the gap. Unfortunately, it's not double-sided, so it looks pretty bad from the outside here. Like I said before, this is not my ideal way of doing this, but that's definitely how the instructions show it. Now, let's go and build it my way, and this is how the Extreme Sets website shows this thing being built. Now this is how I prefer the set. This is pretty much how all the Extreme Sets come together. We've got the 4 walls in a rectangle shape. There are still 3 wall pieces not in use. You can add that double-sided door piece to the center and have a little break in there. You can even open the door and have them enter through either side. So even with this rectangle shape in the background, we still have 3 extra wall pieces. You can extend the back part, make it even wider. Unfortunately, my table is not going to accommodate that. Then you also have the 2 different double-sided doorway pieces in there. Gives you a lot of different display options, a ton of variety here. Here's an example of the cell wall piece of both the new Asylum release and the original release. They are different. It's not a straight-up re-release. This new one here is at least a solid inch taller than the other one, and you can see the coloring, paint job's a little bit different. So now back to assembling the newer Asylum diorama. Let's go ahead and add the floor pieces. Here's one of the floor pieces. There are 3 of them and they are identical. They're folded up. You unfold them. Here's a sort of tile floor at the bottom of the mental hospital. They do have these tabs and they can connect into each other, but it's very odd as the floor pieces should be side by side like this where they wouldn't connect to each other. So a little confused about that. I'm using the Extreme Sets website, the way they have this assembled, to help me make sure I'm doing it right. So frankly, this doesn't really make any sense. Here's the Asylum with the 4 wall pieces and 2 floor pieces underneath. If you decided you wanted to make this even longer with another wall piece, there is a 3rd floor piece, so you can extend this as much as you want. Add this double-sided door piece to the center, and then you've got one area here where you can visit the prisoners, and then a whole separate area here. Here's this thing, fully assembled, at least with 4 wall pieces and 2 floor pieces. You have a lot of customizable options. You can make this thing bigger or smaller. And here's the original Asylum. It's a little bit shorter and a little bit more of a red tint to it. This new Asylum is pretty much the same thing, but a little bit of an updated, enhanced release. The older piece only has 4 wall pieces, 2 double-sided pieces totaling 6. So the new one has 1 additional piece, and the flooring is done a little bit differently than the old one, but visually it looks pretty much the same. Now back to the new version of the Asylum diorama. You can put that double-sided door in the middle. Well, we've already looked at that, so I'm going to keep it open for now. Let's go and add the pillars. You can add the pillars in different various spots. These things are pretty light and can be knocked over easy. I have seen some people take maybe a small canned good item, put it inside the pillar to add some weight. Another thing I really like to do with these pillars is put it in front of the cell here. You can kind of simulate it and make it seem like you have 2 different cells divided by a wall. I definitely like doing that, as you can have 2 different inmates in there, and it gives it more of an Arkham Asylum feel with numerous cells. Here are the 2 pillars from the Asylum 1.0 in the center, next to the 2 pillars from the Asylum 2.0 on the sides. You can see they're consistent with the height difference. This is about how I'm going to have this diorama displayed. It's pretty open and empty on the inside, but it's supposed to be a hallway in an asylum. There wouldn't be a lot of clutter. Most of the cells are going to be behind the wall over here, although I very well may add my own cells to the inside for certain occasions. Now let's check out the measurements of this thing, and don't forget, there's even 1 wall piece that's not attached right now. This thing is even huge without that. So from one side to the other, it's sitting at about 37 inches wide, and it's going to be about 60 inches wide with the extra panel. From bottom to top, about 14 inches tall, and then as far as how deep it is, about 19 inches deep. Now let's check out the action features this diorama has to offer. And then you've got the cell. Here's an older clown, McFarlane Violator in a straitjacket, on a gurney. He's behind the bars here. Works out very nice. And like I said before, I like putting the pillar in the middle of the cell to simulate having 2 cells. Here are a couple of McFarlane Borderlands Psycho figures in 2 different cells. And then you can use one of the wall pieces as a divider in the middle, separating the diorama into 2 different rooms. One room can contain the cell, and the other just a continuation of the hallway to get to the cells. This thing actually has a working set of doorways here that'll lead from one room to the other. I personally don't really want to use this, as once I crease this cardboard, it's probably never going to look quite as good as it does right now, but it would be able to open. I've got this cell that came with a few different Mattel DC Multiverse 3.75-inch Arkham figures. This thing is intended for smaller scale figures, but for some oversized figures like Solomon Grundy, Killer Croc, and Clayface, each one came with a piece of this and they connect to make a cell. You can display it connected as one cell. You could also break this thing apart and use it as a bunch of different cells. I've got to find some dividers here, but this is sort of my idea of what I was going to do for an Arkham Asylum with this diorama. I did manage to get a whole bunch of these on eBay several years ago. I got them for really cheap. I've got a total of 21 of these. It makes for 5 different cells and 1 extra piece. Here's a scene with several different doctors observing and analyzing a patient at Arkham Asylum. And these wrestling cage match cells work great for this purpose as well. Here's some guards escorting an inmate back to the cell. Here's an example of a bunch of different bat rogues in their own cells in Arkham Asylum. We've got Poison Ivy, Mr. Zsasz, Joker, Calendar Man, and then Batman in the straitjacket from Last Night on Earth. Here's a closer look at those 5 figures, most of which are in prison attire. And here are several more Batman villains in prison attire. There was an old DC Direct 4-pack Arkham Asylum, and it came with, I think, Joker, Penguin, Killer Croc, and Batman. The villains were in prison attire. I've always wanted to track one of those down. If anyone knows where one's at, let me know. Here's an image of Batman in the straitjacket when he's in Arkham Asylum. This is from the comic Last Night on Earth. Here he is fighting a bunch of other inmates. And here he is fighting a bunch of cops or guards. This is right out of the comic pages from Last Night on Earth. Here's the diorama with the extra 5th piece of the wall attached. I had to put this thing on the floor because my table simply wasn't big enough. This is almost 60 inches wide at this point. And here it is with the 2 dividers attached. We have a doorway that'll go between room to room. Here's both this Asylum 2.0 with the Asylum 1.0 on the sides. Made a massive Arkham Asylum diorama. Add in all the cells, and I've got about 20 different places to put a criminal. Arkham Asylum at its finest. I just need to find some dividers to put between these things. Now let's check out some various action figures in this diorama. We'll start off with some other prisoner or inmate type figures that are appropriate for this setting. Then we'll check it out with some various action figures from different companies. Here he is with a Mafex Suicide Squad Joker. This one's in a straitjacket and his Arkham gear. Then with a DC Direct Silver Age Lex Luthor. To me, he looks like he's in prison attire as well. And here's the McFarlane Violator in his clown form. He's on a gurney and in a straitjacket. Here are 6 different McFarlane Walking Dead Color Tops figures. This was Daryl Dixon in sort of prison attire. I got 6 of them and did a bunch of various head swaps. These guys look like they could be some great inmates in Arkham Asylum, and that giant A on the front only helps my case. Here are a bunch of different Borderlands Psycho figures. These are from McFarlane, NECA, and some PVC 6-inch statues. They make for some great inmates, as they have that psycho look to them, and they're in orange prison attire. Here are a couple of custom-made wrestling figures into Blackgate prisoners. Then a couple of custom Joker thugs in prison attire. Here are a whole bunch of Mattel DC Multiverse Lex Luthor from Batman vs Superman action figures. He's in his prison attire at the end from Bell Rev. I have a total of 8 of these guys. Did some head swaps. Some of their heads are sitting a little bit too high and probably need to be rethought, but for now it's a bunch of inmates. As you can see, they all said Bell Rev Penitentiary on the back of their uniforms, except for the one that was customized. His says Arkham Asylum. Here are a few wrestling figures. They have these cloth soft goods outfits on. I thought they looked like prison jumpsuits. I still need to head swap one of these guys to have a different inmate. Then, a couple of Mezco Sons of Anarchy figures. These guys are in orange prison jumpsuits. Here's a couple of Mezco Breaking Bad figures. These guys are actually in orange hazmat suits, but I thought it worked pretty good to simulate orange prison jumpsuits. And here are a couple of little psychos from Buffy the Vampire Slayer's episode Hush. These guys are in straitjackets and were really crazy in that episode. Kind of reminds me of the psychos from the game Arkham Asylum. Now let's check this thing out, next to some action figures from different various companies, to see how it fits in both scale and style-wise, in case you want to know which lines you can use with this thing. I'm going to start off my comparisons with some of the larger action figure lines I collect, and work my way smaller. And I will say, this thing's very diverse. It works with the larger 7-inch figures, all the way down to the smaller 6-inch figures. Here are some Jack-specific wrestling figures, some DST Diamond Select toys, and some McFarlane toys in this diorama. And here are some DC Direct and DC Collectibles figures, some NECA figures, and some Mattel wrestling figures in this diorama. Then, with some Jazzwares AEW wrestling figures, some Mezco 112 cloth soft goods action figures, and some Mattel DC Universe Classics and Multiverse figures. And now, with some Mayfix figures, some Hasbro Marvel Legends, and some SH Figure action figures. So overall, this is a very cool diorama. This works for a generic Asylum, but more specifically, it's great for Arkham Asylum. Extreme Sets has really shown some Batman love lately. They've got the Batcave Extreme Sets playset, they've got the Wayne Manor diorama, and now the Asylum. This looks like the Asylum from the Arkham Asylum video game, from the comics, or from the films. I can think of a ton of different scenarios I can use this for, as you saw in the video. If I were to rate this thing, I'm going to give it a very solid 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed the first Asylum diorama that I got, and this one is even better. It's taller, so it's going to work even better for your larger action figures, and it has even more pieces. So this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything you want to say about the video, add to the comment section. If you want to see additional action figure and diorama reviews from me, press subscribe. I do appreciate when you do that. Once again, this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys real soon.